All right. Welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, film critic for filminquiry.com, movieswithmark.com, twincitiesgeek.com, and popthrill.com, among many places. So, it's August right now, and after we've endured the whole Barbenheimer fiasco, we still got more movies to talk about, if you can believe it. So I actually got quite a few films I want to talk about today, as well as a few ones that I've been meaning to catch up on throughout the year. Of course, we're going to be talking about the latest film coming out this weekend, Teenage Mutant Ninja Mutant Mayhem. We'll also be talking about, what else? Okay, of course, we got to talk about the Venture Brothers movie, Radiant is the Blood of the Baboon Heart, the finale to the Venture Brothers series. We'll also be talking about a new... not quite new, came out last weekend, but a sci-fi satire called They Cloned Tyrone, which came out on Netflix. And we'll be talking about a smaller film that came out earlier this year called Smoking Causes Coughing, by the director Quentin Dupieux. I always mispronounce his name. I'm pretty sure I'm still pronouncing his name, but it was the guy who directed Rubber, so we'll talk about that strange film. Okay, so, if you enjoy early movie reviews, like Ninja Turtles is going to be coming out this weekend. I think it's weird. It had, kind of an early release, kind of, sort of, it's supposed to come out on August 2nd, so it's in a few markets right now. But, I mean, it's Thursday, and usually Thursday have previews, so it's generally out everywhere by now. So yeah, if you enjoy early reviews like this, and everything I'm doing on the channel here, be sure to check out the other videos. I do a lot of video essays. Work on a few of them when I can, but yeah, check them out there. Be sure to check out the Patreon that I have linked with this, linked with my YouTube page. I do have some perks on there for kind of the books I'm writing. I'm writing a book about Saturday morning cartoons, so you can check that all out there. All right, now that I got all the CTA out of the way, let's go straight into the big film this weekend. And, man, a lot of long film titles with colons this weekend. I can't even fit them all on the screen. I had to, stretch them. So, let's get the notes up here, so they're all good to go. Okay. And I think we are set. So, here we go in 3, 2, 1. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, is it's kind of interesting. I like that. It's an animated Ninja Turtles film, which this is only the second film that's been the only second theatrical film that's been. I tripped over my words there. Sorry. Gonna have to reset that from it. I'm a little bit excited to talk about this, just because. Preface here, big Turtles fan, grew up watching them, play with the toys, love the tapes, even watched that crappy live musical stage production they did. So a lot to say, so I want to nail it just right. Okay, try it again here. Okay, 3, 2, 1. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem is the latest Ninja Turtles film that is animated. It's the second film, actually, to be in theaters that's animated. The last one was just called, TMNT from 2007, which was okay, but you kind of had to temper your expectations with it a bit. But Mutant Mayhem, after having endured, the live-action CGI Ninja Turtles we've had the past couple of years, having this animated version that is kind of in this kind of I don't quite want to say new wave of CGI, but CGI that wants to incorporate more 2D elements in here. They do have a very big graffiti style, and they have a sketchy kind of like doodle, a doodle notebook kind of effects that they got going here. I like how the film is kind of set up this way, but one of the things that I love most about it is that it feels like the perfect fusion of the silliness of the original cartoon and kind of the darker grit of the first live action film. So it's the way I kind of describe it is I'll lay my cards on the table here. Big Turtles fan when I was a kid. love the toys, love the movies, love the cartoon. But like you could definitely see like there were clear differences between the cartoon that was on television and the movie that played in theaters and that we watched to death on VHS. Like the cartoon was much sillier, it was softer. The turtles had like more rounded faces, much more brighter and colorful. And then you had the live action film, which was darker, it was grittier a bit. Like it was still silly and ridiculous. But it had much more of like a bite to it, a little bit, just because like you could tell like it was directed by someone who directed music videos, because it did have a lot of like that dark, like the kind of like that. I don't quite want to say like dark and grimy, but like it did kind of have like that setting. Like it was mostly taking place at night. So Mutant Mayhem, like it kind of felt the way that I felt with seeing the cartoon and the live action show, and just incorporating those both into the imagination that you bring with the toys. It kind of feels like a good combination of both. But there's like, I mean, aside from like the style, I love the style, and I'll get more into it with this film. But I feel like I gotta set this up here because there actually is a much more interesting script here than I expected. Because usually, after like the past like 2 or 3 Ninja Turtles films, I've kind of been used to like the typical formula, which is the turtles remain underground, we get the standard origin story, and they gotta save New York from either Shredder or some other mutant or other threat. And the film sets it up this way. Like we do get like the standard origins. We see how like the ooze mutates these 4 turtles, and they grow up learning from Splinter. Voiced in this film by Jackie Chan, which is a great choice for the voice here. But a lot of people will talk about this immediately. But like the one thing that sets this film apart is that they really do harp on the teenage aspect of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because these 4 characters, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael, they feel like teenagers. They like both in like how they talk, like their mannerisms, and their ultimate goal in the film. Because usually it always felt like the Turtles films kind of lacked a little bit more of like a goal for the Turtles, as opposed to just like saving the city and being heroes. Here, there's actually like and this has always been a little bit apparent in some of the Ninja Turtles media, but they want to basically have the human experience. They've grown up learning to fear humans, because Splinter has had a bad experience with being above ground, and like humans like looking down on a mutated rat and his mutated turtle kids. So yeah, like there's this like they're forbidden from being seen by the human world, and they want to be more accepted. Primarily, they want to be high school students. They want to, they want to have like the high school experience, which to them, because they've only seen it through like movies and from a distance, it's been built up so much in their mind that this is something that they want. They ultimately just want acceptance. And they have like 2 aspects of they have 2 aspects of the world above ground from their sewers that kind of attract them to this world. One is April O'Neil, voiced here by Io Ebedri. I'm probably butchering her name, sorry. And she's and this, like, April O'Neil, a lot of people know as a reporter here, but because they want to make her relate more to the Ninja Turtles, she is also a teenager as well. And an underdog teenager. She's an aspiring reporter, but she can't quite be in front of the camera without vomiting. So she's got a lot to get over, and hoping that the Turtles will help her out. So she opens up to the Turtles. She kind of like explains a little bit more about her world. She opens them up to like their first glimpses of high school and all that. So she represents the good in humanity. And representing, a different route to take is the villain of the film, Superfly, voiced by Ice Cube, which is... Ice Cube's not trying to do it. Like, it's just Ice Cube, which... To its credit, it works for this villain, because this is a mutant who has grown up not to fear the human world, but to destroy it, basically. Like, he recognizes that humans won't accept mutants like him, and he's rescued other mutants, so you get, like, a cavalcade of all the other characters that Ninja Turtles fans will know, like Leatherhead and Bebop and Rocksteady and Mondo Gecko and all these different characters. And he wants to basically enslave humanity and thinks that, like the Turtles will be like yet another ally to help him in this fight. So you basically have an X-Men situation going on here. You have like, Splinter representing Xavier, somewhat, but like kind of off to the side. And then you have, Superfly representing Magneto. Now the way that I describe that, the way that it's described in the film, it seems like it's much heavier subject matter. But actually, it's actually pretty light for this kind of material. Like it does kind of, it sets up these interesting aspects, but it kind of breezes by them kind of like quick and fast paced, so it doesn't like linger on it too much, which is both like it's a strength and a weakness in this film, because like it's a strength because it constantly keeps you interested. Like I love the fact that we do get to spend enough time with the Turtles to get to see their personality, which is similar to what we've been used to with Ninja Turtles over the years. Like they sling out pop culture, they love pizza, they're terrible at hiding, they're skilled at fighting, but not always. Like they make some mistakes here and there, and they have stammering banter over each other. So typical Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stuff. But it's weird because like this is a film that I wanted to be longer, if only just so that we could have like a few more down moments with the characters, because they set them all up like beautifully that there's like enough of a drive and enough of an interest in what the characters want to achieve. Like we see how Leonardo, who everyone knows is like, he's got the blue headband, he's the leader of the Turtles, but he's not quite got the full leadership angle down. Like he's still not recognized as someone who can take charge. Not yet. He's trying, but he's getting there. You have Donatello, who's experienced with tech and a huge anime geek, and he has to kind of learn to apply that into his crime fighting. You have Michelangelo, who's wants to be like an improv comedian, wants to try out his acting chops, and has to find a way also to work that into the climax as well. And of course, Raphael doesn't need much retooling. He's the brash one who has anger issues, so of course he's going to be violent and use that in his crime fighting. So and it's like he has like the smallest hill to get over, because it's just got to find a way to channel that anger into making it work with his fighting style. So like there's enough of a drive there where you want to see what these characters can do, but we don't get to spend that much time with them, and I feel like that hinders the film, because like you can feel like the problems of making Ninja Turtles into an animated film is that we don't have a lot of down moments, because it has to be fast paced, it has to be quick, and it's got to like keep the audience engaged for how expensive the animation is up on the screen. So we don't get a lot of time. We get a little bit of a few moments that are kind of cute and fun here, but not as many moments as I'd like. Because when I think back on like the original 1990s Ninja Turtles movie, my favorite moments from that are not just like the action scenes. My favorite ones that stick out in my mind are like the smaller, quieter moments, like the scene where like Raphael is kind of like confessing to Splinter how he's conflicted. The scene where like Donatello and Casey Jones are working on a car and they're trading alphabetical insults with each other. The way that Michelangelo is watching television and getting like pissed off at old cartoons and waiting for like the pizza guy and say like, pizza dude's got 5 minutes. Like little scenes like that, just like it's weird, because like I look at the original Ninja Turtles film as a hangout movie, and Mutant Mayhem has aspects of that, but you want more of that. You're just like, no, I want to hang out with them before they have to jump right into like the next action scene. Because like, especially like, it feels like they get lost in the shuffle, because by the time you get to the third act, all those like mutant characters I mentioned, like Superfly, Bebop, Rocksteady, Mondo Gecko, and Wingnut, and all these other characters, they just fight for the screen at that point. And at that point, it's like, there's not going to be a whole lot of moments to appreciate the other characters, especially when all these other mutant characters, they're voiced by a ton of different actors here. Like, I'm sure people have seen this with like the trailer. They show like this huge list of voice actors that they've got for it, and they're all playing these mutant characters. Like, well, you've got like Seth Rogen, you've got John Cena, who is Natasha Demetrius, who I think I'm saying it right. She plays like she's on What We Do in the Shadows. Who else? Yeah, Post Malone. You have Paul Rudd as Mondo Gecko, and you don't get to spend a lot of time with them. They have some funny lines, and I like their performances, but you don't you don't get to spend as much time with them, and you feel like all of them are just fighting for the screen. I also forgot a few more. I forgot Hannibal Buress and Rose Byrne in these roles. Yeah, it's just like it's frustrating, especially when you realize by the third act it's just a big fight scene to save New York, which looks good, but you wish you could be invested just a little bit more. Now, all that being said, while I feel like the script has issues where it feels like it chops out a lot of the character development that I wanted, this is an aspect where I think like the style of the film more than makes up for it. Like, just like the way that the film is framed with like the CGI, where it feels like constantly moving doodles with all like the little like 2D texture details on like the Ninja Turtles, and like the backgrounds are kind of like like they look like graffiti art with kind of like janky lines and scribbles for like the lights and the smoke effects, which I found really cool. It's just a treat to look at. It's mostly rap songs, and it's not Vanilla Ice. You will get like, okay, here, like they do throw the fans a little bit of a bone. Like if you were hoping that, the ninja rap would be in there, there's a like 2 or 3 second quick little cameo they throw in there really quick, but just like really quick. Because you can tell like the film wants to establish its own tone and not just be, nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia. Like, like you want this Ninja Turtles to work for a younger crowd, and the younger crowd is not going to have all this foreknowledge of like these different mutants and the ninja rap and like the history of like TCRI and all that. Like kids are not going to know that, so you've got to make this work for the younger crowd, and thankfully it does with a great, like I said, with the animation style. It feels all its own. It doesn't feel like it's replicating all the other Ninja Turtle animations that have come before it, including television. Like the cartoons that have been on television have done a great job having like a distinct style that sets apart from every one of them. Like there's a CGI Nickelodeon Ninja Turtles, and then there's a somewhat like 2D Ninja Turtles that looks far different. So this kind of feels like an interesting kind of mesh of the two, a little bit. Just like I said, it's got that graffiti style that kind of becomes all its own. But another aspect that I love more about this film, and this is an aspect where I feel like for a lot of like diehard Ninja Turtles fans who, are going to be highly critical of the film, I feel like they're kind of going to look at it as like Tron Legacy, because this is a case where I feel like the soundtrack is definitely like the most perfect part of the film. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. And if you're familiar with their work, it kicks ass. And it kicks ass here as well. Like I found myself astounded, like, oh my god, this hard driving synth is actually really cool. And I actually went back and listened to the soundtrack a few times after I got out of the film, just because it's that good, and I'm probably gonna listen to it a whole bunch more, just because like it's hard to describe just like what makes it so cool. But I love the aspect of how like I'll say this: if you look at the soundtrack, just look at what the tracks are named, because it's not the tracks that you would expect for a kid's film. And I kind of want to stress that, because like it doesn't feel like Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross were making music for a kid's film. It felt like they were trying to make, this really, badass Ninja Turtles score, and it actually works. It really got me into the film. So like even when there were moments like when it was like, okay, this is gonna be the big climax where they have the fight. The animation looks great. The soundtrack is kicking ass, and the thematic elements are still there. Like thankfully they don't get lost in the shuffle. By the end, it's like the characters still have concrete goals, and by the end they achieve them well. And you spend like just enough time with the characters where you're kind of pulling for them. So it got to this point in the film where I'm not like, oh, this is the best Ninja Turtles film ever, but I'm just kind of like, okay, you know what, this is working. Hey, as a theatrical animated Ninja Turtles film, compared to the last one we got, this is actually really good. This is like, it doesn't feel like I'm just kind of tempering my expectations here. It feels like they know what they're doing here. They get a good vibe going. They find just the right amount of humor to evoke from it. Like, I love how there's like a running joke about the turtles and nipples. And I also love the fact that they're not afraid to go a little bit grotesque with this film, not just with like the animation. Like they frame Baxter Stockman in kind of like this kind of like blocky, grimy underground lab, which I love the way that it looks, but it feels very fitting for like for a Nickelodeon film. Because like like Nickelodeon films always have like that ident where they have like the orange splat, and this time to fit Ninja Turtles they gave it the green splat, which it feels it feels like it's like that's fitting. You know how like Nickelodeon used to do the slime on everything, so it kind of feels like a match made in heaven. So of course there's going to be like some gross out humor. In fact, there's one character, I believe it's called Scumbug, who just vomits green all over the place. And April O'Neil also has a bit where she just vomits a lot. So I love the fact that it's embracing this gross humor of the 90s, but can still have this kind of modern vernacular where like I feel like it might resonate with young kids. Like I can't speak for sure that like that it'll nail down the tone, because that's up to the kids. It's up to them how they view the film. But for me, at least, what matters most to me is that they capture the spirit of Ninja Turtles, but still try to find their own voice with it. And they do that here. Like, they make these Ninja Turtles unique, beyond just their designs. Like, I should bring that up, though. But, like, the design here is so good because you don't have to color coordinate the turtles or, like, make, like, their shells, like, a different size or something like that. They actually give them distinct features that allow you to tell them apart. Like, I love the fact that Donatello has, like, glasses, and he has, like, I think he has, like, noise-canceling headphones with him. And you have, like, Raphael's a little bit bulkier. Michelangelo's, like, a little bit lankier because he's, a little bit more of, like, a, active actor, I guess. But yeah, like, there's enough to tell them apart here where it doesn't, like I said, you don't have to feel like you're constantly trying to temper your expectations and piece everything together here. Especially, like, I love the fact that the film does not rely on nostalgia. Like, there's little, like, there's nods, like I said, like, they reference, like, oh, there's Leatherhead. I had that toy as a kid, but there's never a moment where they're constantly, like, winking, like, hey, remember this? Remember these toys? Remember what happened in this cartoon here? And it's like, no, it's actually, it feels like it's playing up to the younger crowd, and yeah, it does what I want to see happen. It's what I want to have. It's what I want to happen with the Ninja Turtles franchise, which is I want it to continue on so that another generation can enjoy it. And this, I mean, like, yeah, it's like Nickelodeon has kept this going with all the various animated shows, but for a theatrical animated film, Mutant Mayhem, it's honestly, if I'm kind of jealous. I wanted this film as a kid. Because yeah, like despite my minor issues with like the scripting, where I feel like I wanted to spend a lot more time with the characters, the tone, the vibe, the animation, and the Reznor Ross score here, it's just it's so great that I love just the style of this film, and it gets, like I said, it gets the spirit of Ninja Turtles right, and ultimately at the end of the day, that's all you can hope for. If you're a big Turtles fan, and this film nailed it. So it's not like, like the original live action 1990s Ninja Turtle film is still like my gold standard. But this is a fun new iteration, and I like what it's doing with the material, and it's just having fun with it. And yeah, I have to admit it, I had a lot of fun with Mutant Mayhem. So yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem is currently playing in theaters everywhere. And I hope it does. I've been looking at the numbers. I think it's been doing pretty well. Critic score has been great, yeah. I think, what was it, like was it on like Rotten Tomatoes? It's like 97%. Well, get ready for it to go higher, because I have another review that's going to be posted soon that's going to go directly to that, so let's get it to 99. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a fun animated action film for kids, is a bit of a rarity. Yeah, like the number one thing I can say is like go see it for the music. Just like if you need a primer, go look up the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It's some of the best Ninja Turtles music I've ever heard. Title of another animated movie. Okay, so let's get the notes up here. All right. Okay, ready in 3, 2, 1. So, Venture Brothers, Radiant is the blood of the Baboon heart, is the movie finale to Venture Brothers, which, like, we needed this. After the Venture Brothers, probably one of the best Adult Swim shows ever made, was unceremoniously canceled after 7 seasons, it needed a proper ending. Especially with, like, how season 7 ended on, like, such a big cliffhanger that you wanted to see what happens next. We needed closure, and sure enough, we got it with this film, and it's mostly like it's surprising like how well that like the creators of Jackson Public and Doc Hammer can just jump right into this material after so many years and still make it work. And it's like it's one of those shows like it's worth the wait. Like we only got like 7 seasons, but that's like 7 seasons over the course of like, oh my god, like what? Like it started in like 2004, 2003 if you want to count the pilot, and it didn't end till like 2018. So we've been used to like massive gaps in years and like waiting to see what will happen with Venture Brothers next. And it's always been worth it because like the animation has always turned out brilliantly. The scripts are that they're hilarious and layered, and they tap into so much unique and satirical aspects of pop culture that it's always worth the wait. So the fact that we got a closure in the form of a movie which is like you can tell like Hammer and Public have they've gotten used to this. Like they've done like what was it? They did that like feature length special, like all this and Gargantua 2, I believe. Like they did like a whole special feature there. So yeah, Radiant is the blood of the Baboon heart. Is pretty much like it plays like season 8. Like it doesn't try to like I'll say this: if you're not familiar with Venture Brothers, you gotta watch the show for 2 reasons. One is because it's awesome. And 2 is because this movie will not slow down to explain any of it. It picks up immediately where season 7 left off, with Hank Venture leaving home and the Monarch and Doc Venture realizing that they share the same DNA. And after like those events, you want to see what happens. Like what's going to happen to Hank? Are they going to find out who? And how is Monarch going to feel about being the arch nemesis of what seems like his brother? So a lot of questions to be answered here, and the film does answer these questions, but it answers them the way that the way that Venture Brothers always makes that material work, which is that you will get answers, but they won't be the answers you expect. And yeah, and because like when you do get the answers, like they're much more ridiculous and they're not what you would have predicted, which keeps the several moments. Like this is a film that stays true to the formula by having like the Monarch realizing that he has a new suit with like a grappling gun that comes out of his belly button and thinks it's so cool, only to have like him use it in like the situation where it would come in handy, and it doesn't work. It just malfunctions and it blows up in their face, and it's hilarious. And like I said, the film doesn't slow down because there's already, Monarch dealing with his own lineage problems. You also have like a new organization called Arch, which has come in, and they've kind of, like they're a new secretive competitive organization that the Guild and OSI have no idea what they are. So a lot of mystery going on here. There's some framing going on. There's some dark history unearthed. And it plays out in the fashion that you would expect from Venture Brothers. So a lot of the aspects that you love about the show are still here. The animation still looks beautiful. It still looks crisp. It doesn't feel like they toned it down for the budget here. It has major theatrics, considering that the big set piece here is that Venture Tower gets lifted into the air by robots. So that's a pretty cool sight to see, especially with how it's done and how another one of Doc's inventions just kind of blows up in his face, as they always do. Just the voice acting hasn't missed a beat here. Like, it doesn't feel like, I mean, it's only been like a few years since like we got the last season of the TV show, so not much has changed. Like, I was a little bit worried about that with Doc Hammer, just because like Adult Swim did this little bit where they posed season 8 in the form of like a puppet show for just like a quick little segment, and like I could kind of hear like Doc's voice straining a bit there. And to point it out where it's present in the film, like he does kind of strain his voice a little bit with Shore Leave. It feels like he's trying to hit a little bit higher with Shore Leave, and it's still a little bit gravelly. But for the most part, everyone else's voices are still on point here. Like James Urbaniak still brings it as Dr. Venture. He's still got the same tone and voice. Patrick Warburton is back as Brock and just does his Brock voice as you've always known it. Michael Sinter, I always mispronounce Michael Sinterklaas as Dean Venture still has like that voice, but you're like, I like the fact that they've kind of matured Dean a little bit, so he's not as whiny with each season that progressed since. So he's still got that going, and then of course, like everyone else's voices are still on point here. Like, especially the voices that they bring back here. Like Clancy Brown is back as Red Death, and he's still a lot of fun with like that deep voice. Who's like, this guy who separates his work from his family. So it's great to see that dynamic, and how like he lets his daughter name like his horse that he rides into battle. You have J.K. Simmons returning as Ben, who you might remember briefly showed up as like as kind of like the scientist who lives, off to the side on the Venture compound. So he's there to more or less just like divulge the secrets. Like, oh, you really want to know this? I know everything. I can, I'll tell you over a few beers. And then special shout outs to like Stephen Rattazzi, I believe, as Dr. Orpheus. Dr. Orpheus is always such fun. And the fact that there's a great sequence here where, he basically ends up in like the costume of like Zardos at one point, which is just like too wonderful for words. And I like how they incorporate. It's not just like him and just in random Zardos cosplay. Like there's a reason for him to be in it for that particular sequence in the film. Yeah, and it's like there isn't like it feels just like a condensed version of season 8. More than it does like like some big epic Venture Brothers movie, and I think that actually works in this film. Some people might find that like a hindrance, that it wasn't like a much grander film in which like like the OSI was like threatened and like the guild is collapsing and Dr. Venture has to save today or something epic like that, because that was my biggest worry for the film. Because like the other Adult Swim movie we got last year was Yaguadin Hungerforce film Plantasm, and that was trying to be like like that epic showdown of like, here's the final battle that that you've all been waiting to see, and it didn't work for that style of the show, and it felt like a much different movie. And Radiant is the Blood of the Baboon Heart, which title I love to say. It still feels like Venture Brothers. It's still trying to bring like this story to its conclusion, but still brings out all the hallmarks that you love with it, and still weaves it all together so well. Like, I love the fact that they're still keeping track of all like the different characters here and weave them in brilliantly. Like, Colonel Gentleman is still in a relationship with Billy Quizboy's mother, and I love like they briefly bring that up. I love that they make better use of some of the other characters who don't feel like they don't do as much. Like, I love that Jefferson Twilight, voiced by Charles Purnell, actually does get to fight Blackulas in this one. And then just general ridiculousness, like the fact that like Jefferson Twilight has a car called the Blood Vessel, and how Dr. Orpheus has basically kind of like this Doctor Strange brownstone where they have like a golem made out of pants. Just all this fun stuff that you can evoke with like, all the, geeky pop culture and try to weave it into something that is like perfectly satirical, where it never feels like it has to slow down and point out like, oh, here's this reference, here's this one. There are a few times when the characters are like, oh, wait, what's this from? And then they have to kind of like remind themselves. Like at one point they reference 16 Candles and a character feels like they have to point it out. Even with the bit with like Zardoz, it feels like Dr. Orpheus has to point it out. Although I think it's Jefferson Twilight who has to point it out just because he's more excited about it, pointing out obscure cinema, which is what you expect from Venture Brothers. So yeah, like there's a lot more excitement, I guess, in this one. There's more like action. There's a ridiculous, but in like the ridiculous fashion you expect from Venture Brothers. Like there's a ridiculous sequence where like was it like Doc, Hatred, Monarch, Helper, and 21 all have to stop these robots from lifting a building, and they screw up in like the most brilliant way, where they're like flung all around a room and like their eyeballs bleed and their clothing gets ripped off, and it's just it's that perfect level of like slapstick that I've come to expect from Venture Brothers, while also giving a decent amount of closure. Like even when I don't want to give it away, but just like the way that they give you the final answers is the way that I would expect the Venture Brothers to go down, where it's not that important who is the mother of Hank and Dean. Like they lead you on the mystery and the trail, but obviously, the journey is more exciting than the answer, because especially when you get to the end, you actually find out the answer is way more effed up than what the actual mystery was leading them towards here. It's just brilliant subversion, especially the displays of like, by the end of in the third act, like there's some grotesque violence and nudity that just kind of like catches you off guard here, which I would have it no other way. So there's not much to say, like unless you're like a Venture Brothers fan. Like it's hard to communicate to a non-fan just like what makes it work so well. I guess like the smaller moments of like character development here, like I love like how at one point Monarch is trying to raid Venture's building again, but while he's doing so, he's bickering with Henchman 21 over like I think they're bickering over like which songs were played by Toto, while they're in the middle of like staging like their weapons to fire, which is just that's what you expect. And just like the banter they have, the way that the characters bring just the right amount of personality to each scene, especially with like the new addition of Mantilla, the runner of Arch, who's played by Nina Arianda. And like the way that she like appears, it seems like she's gonna like take down like OSI and like the guild and like wants to like dominate the world. And then when you actually figure out what she's really trying to do, you find out that it's a little bit more petty than you thought before. So yeah, just brilliant like satire on like the whole hero villain dynamic and aspects of like film and comic books. Just beautiful. Just like it's the Venture Brothers movie I always wanted. And like it doesn't quite, I don't quite want to say like it shuts the door on Venture Brothers and locks it behind it, but it does like sweep it up enough where you're not feeling the same way you did at the end of season 7, where you just kind of feel let down that you didn't get to see the story culminate. And here you do. You actually, this like, hey, if Venture Brothers has to end here, it's a great way to end this series. I dare say, like, yeah, it's a perfect way to end the Venture Brothers saga, which is like easily one of the best Adult Swim shows ever made. Like I've watched it since college. I've loved every bit of it, and this is just the most beautiful way to end the series on highlighting everything that it does so well and just cranking it up to its levels of where it works so perfectly. It's such a perfect film that especially after watching what happened with like the Aqua Teen movie last year, the Venture Brothers movie is just it's the perfect ending. So, Venture Brothers, Radiant is the Blood of the Baboon Heart is currently available on video, but I'm gonna say I should say it's currently available on digital. You can rent it through like all the other video renting, video purchase platforms. It'll be for rent in about, I think it'll be on rental platforms on Tuesday actually. Because yeah, I was gonna say yeah, it is on Blu-ray, but it's sold out. And I don't mean like it's sold out at like a few stores. I mean it's sold out everywhere. So, plan on waiting a bit. And like, I knew something was up too because like the Thursday before it was gonna come out on Blu-ray, I went to go like see if I could like pre-order it, and I noticed like, oh wait, the delivery says it's not gonna be till like August 12th, and I'm like, but wait, like the film's coming out at like on the last week of July, right? It's like yeah it is, and then I realized, oh, everyone else already pre-ordered it. So, yeah. So, unfortunately, I just had to watch it on digital, which sucks because I want it on Blu-ray, because I have seen there are extras, and there are special features on there, so now I want it more than ever. Of course, I would also like to have the Venture Brothers TV series on Blu-ray. I mean, I know that, like, there are Blu-rays for, like, a few seasons, and they did just recently release a complete box set, which I'm glad they did. I'm glad it's still in print so everyone can find it. But yeah, like it's just, you want it on Blu-ray, you know? Like if you're gonna have the movie on Blu-ray, why not the show? And then like it hit me for just a little bit. Like this is probably Warner Brothers' plan. They're gonna wait like maybe a year, and then they'll do like Venture Brothers the complete Blu-ray box set, and it will have the movie in it. So here's hoping. I'm hoping it's better packaging too, because like the complete the complete series that they just recently released on DVD, it's okay. I mean it's like they have like a little bit of a hieroglyphics theme, which is it's not bad, but it's like, you know, kind of want a little bit more out of the complete series, especially when the series is so good. You know, it should have a few more extras on it. All right, let me get my notes up here for the next one here. We'll get into the next film, They Clone Tyrone. Okay. Get the notes up here. All right. Okay. Alrighty. Here we go. Let's see if I got all the names here. Okay. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. So, They Cloned Tyrone is a sci-fi satire, which well, I mean, like I should clarify, like it's a sci-fi racial satire, somewhat in the vein of the film Sorry to Bother You, and I want to bring that up because like I feel like a lot of people are going to compare this movie to Sorry to Bother You, and they're probably like I'll say this. If you're coming into They Clone Tyrone and you're expecting Sorry to Bother You, you're probably going to be let down because it's not as absurd and it's not as like, you know, it's not quite that. It's a fairly straightforward, sci-fi satire about racial gentrification. So the story is here. It takes place in a ghetto in which Fontaine, played by John Boyega, is, you know, he finds like he leads a dangerous life on the streets. He's just trying to get by day to day. And then one day he ends up, after, you know, witnessing some weird stuff happening in his neighborhood, like he notices like trucks come by and they just pick up people on the street randomly and just think, oh, that's kind of weird. Well, then one day he ends up dead. ends up getting shot, but then he awakens the next day, and it seems like he's just fine. And he's confused by this, and everyone else in his community is confused by this as well. This includes the two people that he starts trusting more, which is Slick Charles, a pimp played by Jamie Foxx, and Yo-Yo, a prostitute played by Tayona Paris. And I'll say this, I love the dynamic between like Fox and Paris here. Like, you know, they bite back at each other like so well that it's fun to like just hear every little bit of their dialogue here. And they also like make like the perfect cohorts because they can kind of see through like the veneer of what's going on within their community. Because Fontaine notices that something's off here. Because like what's happening here? Like I was dead before and now I'm back to life. He notices that there's weird stuff that's trying to like hypnotize like the area. Like the fried chicken place seems like it makes people laugh uncontrollably. The church seems like it has something weird going on there as well. Just and like the beauty salon seems like there's some questionable aspects of like the products that they're using here. And of course, you know, if you're putting all the pieces together, you see where all this is going. They soon unearth a secret underground lab that is trying to control everything that is going on in this community. And more importantly, they're trying to clone people in this community, which is just, you know, like, and they soon find out why it is. Like, you know, like there's a sinister plan behind it, which is that, you know, they want to, you know, they basically want to use like mind control and generational breeding to kind of like dominate the world here. So it's very much like you know, like it's very on the nose satire about like gentrification here, and it's not as like subversive as like, yeah, like Sorry to Bother You. What it actually did remind me of is it reminded me a lot more of like the more experimental satires of like the 1970s and a little bit of like the 1960s that they were trying to make a point. And they wanted to make it blunt and, you know, like, so that there was no mistaking what the film was trying to say. And just gun straight into it and, you know, evoke all, like, you know, like the satirical elements that you could out of it. So, like, you know, yeah, like it's, you know, it's a, you know, like you can see the elements at play here. Like, you know, like the fried chicken place is, you know, trying to distract people from the fact that, you know, this, you know, like the government wants to control this area and this people and, you know, to, you know, basically manipulate people into an aspect of their lives where they feel like they have no control of it. And you kind of get aspects of, like there's a little bit of like Groundhog Day in there as well. Like, you know, the obvious element of like, you know, Fontaine coming back from the dead, but also reliving the same day and seeing the same elements at play and feeling like there's nothing you can do about it. So it's got a little bit of Groundhog Day in there. But yeah, like I was also thinking about like, might not be the best example, but like kind of like the satires of like, of Robert Downey Sr., with stuff like that was trying to be subversive and point out like, racial prejudices that kind of like lurked under the surface and just kind of like bring them up, you know, like, you show like the hideous side of gentrification, albeit in like a weird sci-fi setting in which like the villain is played by like Kiefer Sutherland. Although I will say like Kiefer Sutherland makes a great villain here. Like this Kiefer Sutherland usually like I expect him to just be kind of like, you know, a kind of like like brash and like gravelly voice, and here he's kind of like a little bit more like upbeat and almost, I don't quite want to say an eccentric villain, but you can tell like he's having a bit too much fun with the material here. I also didn't expect like David Alan Grier to just randomly show up as a preacher in the film, so it feels a lot like, you know, like an episode of like maybe like Black Mirror or Twilight Zone, where there's a very clear message at play here, and it's very blunt about what it's trying to do, and it tries to invoke some sci-fi weirdness into it as well. And for the most part, it works. Like, you know, like a big criticism of it is just going to be, yes, it's on the nose, it's blunt, it's beating you over the head with its message, but it's also on point, and it's also trying to find some fun aspects to play with it here. Like the way that it's shot, the way that the way that Fontaine concocts his plan to raid the underground lab is brilliant. The way that it's edited, the way that Fontaine has to more or less come to terms with himself for trying to like bring down this organization, it works pretty well. And I feel like I feel like maybe if I watch this film like a few more times, I feel like there's much more to it than that. But on the first viewing, just like from what it's presenting here, like there's no mistaking the message that it's trying to push here. And also it's brilliantly acted. Like I love the way that Boyega just kind of like melts into this role. Fox plays up his usual kind of like eccentric. I kind of miss that kind of like, you know, more like that faster type of Jamie Foxx, because I feel like he's been in much more like slower dramatic roles over the years. So it was great to see him kind of in that mode. And Teyonah Parris, just like I love her work in this film as well. Just the way that she tries to like assert herself, and like because like between like the three heroes are different. Like it's Fontaine, Slick Charles, and Yo-Yo, and the way that they come together and stress like their own urgency and individuality is just brilliant. Like especially the way that Slick and Yo-Yo kind of like bicker with each other, like they have like the debacles of like a pimp and hoe, and the way that they kind of come to terms with it later when they have like a common enemy. It kind of works out well. Like I don't want to say like it's brilliant, but it just kind of like happens the way that you would expect it to on this adventure, and it plays out fairly nice, and I like the way that it builds up throughout the film. I also like the bakers, and I haven't mentioned Tyrone. Well, Tyrone is actually a kind of a surprise for the end of the film. Not a big surprise, but like I love the way that the title kind of weaves into like the last scene of the film in a fairly creative way. So I guess I would say you almost kind of gotta temper your expectations here, because I feel like the bar for sci-fi satire and just like satire in general, with having stuff like Black Mirror around, like the new season is actually pretty good for Black Mirror right now. So just to like on that level, it's not as up there. Like it's not like like I said, it's not the next Sorry to Bother You, but it is still a damn good film. And it, like I said, it reminded me of like a like the satire of like a 1970s film. So it's definitely, it's leaning a little bit more into blaxploitation, and on that level, I think it mostly gets the job done, and it actually kind of works. Like it feels like it's just kind of more or less trying to say like one or two things here, but it's proclaiming them loud, and it's trying to have some fun with the material here, and it actually does it pretty well. So yeah, They Clone Tyrone is currently playing on Netflix. I know, it's such a fun title, isn't it? They Clone Tyrone. I was trying to hold myself back, because I didn't want to, like I revealed like all the spoilers. Trust me, I didn't. There's a few other surprises in the film, so. I feel like you need this movie completely blind. The trailers and the teasers for it are just terrible, and just telling you the plot. That's what I've heard. I see, like, I always kind of try to avoid trailers if I can. Like, and that's easy for, like, like, direct to, like, streaming stuff, like They Clone Tyrone, and, all these other direct to streaming stuff. It's easier to do with that. But yeah, like, I've heard, like, the marketing reveals too much. But also, like, I was kind of trying to think, too, like, how do you advertise like that? Because, like, you kind of got to whet people's appetites by showcasing, like, a little bit. I guess, like, you could just do, like, a smash cut of, like, just a few scenes and not really divulge too much here. Like, I tried to do that with my review. I hope I did, because there's a few surprises that are actually pretty cool in the film. So, hopefully that comes across. Okay, one more film. And it's kinda sorta satire. Okay, let me get notes up here. Okay. And here we go. In 3, 2, 1. So, smoking causes coughing is the new horror comedy, I guess. It's a weird film. It's another weird film from director Quentin Dupieux. And you might know, like, he was the director of the weird film Rubber, which was it was a film about a killer tire, but it tried to be something a little bit more than that, and it was all over the place. It was messy, it was weird, it was unpredictable, and this film is kind of in that same vein. So it has a lot of the stuff I love about the director, and also a lot of the stuff that is just frustrating with his work. So I think, like, for people who have seen just, like, the poster or the trailer for Smoking Causes Coughing, they may think that this is a that this is a Power Rangers parody, because it looks like it. You know, you have, like, at the heart of the film is a ridiculous spandex team who all wear, like, kind of like Power Rangers spandex outfits and helmets, and they fight rubber-suited monsters, and they gotta save the day. And they have a hilarious gimmick where they're called the Tobacco Force, where they use all the powers of tobacco to kill people. Because, like you think, like, you hear that name and you think, like, oh, are they endorsing tobacco? And it's like, not really. They're using it to kill people. Like, they're even, like, the characters, like, they all have like, their hero names are benzene, methanol, nicotine, mercury, and ammonia. So like, they all combine their forces and they use them to, like, kill monsters by shooting out their elements, and then the rubber monsters explode into, like, a huge explosion of blood and guts all over the place. So, like, you'll get that aspect in, like, the first part of the film, but I think what some people might not realize is that I guess, like, it's almost kind of like a bait and switch, or I feel like I gotta preference the film this way, which is that it's not really a Power Rangers parody. Like, it has elements of it, but what the film ultimately is, more than anything, is it's a weird anthology, akin to something like the 1970s Tales from the Crypt movie, where it's just like, you know, like, there's a framing device, but then it's used to tell all these other weird stories. Because, like, the whole Power Rangers deal, like, there's a plot to it. Like, the team needs to work together. They work they work under the leadership of this weird rat puppet who's, like, constantly drooling green vomit out of his mouth, I think, who wants them to work together to save the world, but they don't have as much teamwork, so he sends them off on a retreat in which they end up telling scary stories to each other. And the scary stories end up making up most of the film. So, like, there's a weird story about a woman who puts, like, a strange, like, robot helmet on herself and she goes on a killing spree. There's another weird story about a guy who gets caught in a wood chipper and somehow survives it as, like, a bucket of blood that keeps talking to people. So, and it's like they're weird and bizarre stories, and, like, some of them get cut off, some of them don't get fully told, some of them just come out of the blue. Like, at one point they just stop telling scary stories, and one of them is just randomly spouted by their dinner. Like, they're cooking a fish, and, like, the fish will just wake up and say, "Hey guys, listen to this story." It's like, okay, you know, this is the weird crap that we signed up for, so might as well listen to it. Like, there's weird stuff, like there's a bizarre robot that washes down the heroes, but it looks like it's pissing all over them. Like I said, the rat puppet is weird. The rat puppet, I love how it reminded me of like, Meet the Feebles, just because the rat puppet is disgusting, but the rat puppet is also, like, engaged with, like, a lot of women. Like, it's so bizarre. Like, the film frames it like the female members of the team all want to date this rat, but the rat always has some other woman in bed with him when he's talking to them. And yes, in case you're curious, the rat does make out with the women that he has in his bed, with the green vomit coming out of his mouth and everything. So, like, I want to praise the film on one level, which is that I love how the director kind of makes like, bizarre stuff like puppets and blood and vomit and guts, almost kind of like, you know, like, elements of, like, dry humor. because like they're not really present in the film as just kind of like, oh, here's the gross out moment, you know, here's what we're expecting. Like, characters more or less trying to just kind of accept this world. Like, it's treated as like the norm here, and you can tell like there's definitely like I guess if you want to kind of like twist the film, there is an aspect of being concerned about you know, like your own life and you know, what it means to be alive and what it means to be here in the moment. But I feel like that's if you like that's if you kind of gotta like turn your head and like squint at it to kind of like see that aspect of it. It's mostly just a showcase of weirdness that, you know, that almost that like a film that's kind of like begging the audience to kind of like try to make sense of it all. And it's definitely not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I would say this as a primer: go see Rubber, and if Rubber didn't do anything for you, this film won't do anything for you either. Because if you're just coming in expecting a Power Rangers parody, you're going to be let down, because there's a lot of other weird stuff here, and it's kind of delivered in just this very bizarre, dry tone. And I do like this. I like the fact that the film is experimental, like, because I had no idea the route that it was going to take. I didn't know where the stories were going, and I couldn't quite decipher what they were all trying to connect in the bigger picture here. But just like I think like the tone of it is just like it just like with like this weird metafiction element to it is what kind of entranced me. So even when like the film felt messy and all over the place, and where the like all these anthology stories just kind of mostly peter out, like they either end with just like a lot of death, or just like they just run out of weird stuff to throw at the screen, so you're just kind of like, oh, I guess that story's over. It's a very bizarre and experimental film, and it's and I will say this: I do appreciate that the director is still trying to do just bizarre, unpredictable stuff like this. That I'm just like, I'm not seeing any other director out there try this stuff, just because it's, you know, like it's like it's almost kind of like gonzo filmmaking, just with like how it's trying to take all this stuff that you expect to just go on like this straight line of a narrative, and then just mess it all up and see where it takes you. And either it resonates with you, like it's just like surreal enough to like intoxicate you with it, or it doesn't. And I feel kind of bad, because like I'm almost kind of somewhere in the middle, because like the writing is all over the place, like not all the gags hit, but the aspects of like the story and the bizarre tone that it takes just kept me watching, where it's just I was transfixed on it. So I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. Like I have issues with how it's written, but in terms of how it's directed, it's just it's like a trippy dream that you just can't turn away from. So yeah, like on that level, I do appreciate what the director is trying to do. Even if most of the film I wasn't as engaged with as I would like to be. I will say this though: I like the rat. I like the little Meet the Feebles rat that's like making out with women. Give the rat his own film. Yeah. So yeah, Smoking Causes Coughing is currently playing on Hulu. Oh, so, in the chat here. So maybe frame they clone Tyrone as a murder mystery. I think so. Possibly. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like a trippy sci-fi murder mystery where it's like I got to solve my own murder, but yeah. I mean, yeah, like I think like any way you could to advertise it to kind of get people interested, that's not just revealing the whole plot. Yeah, that'd work. I'll say this though: the advertising for Smoking Causes Coughing, it did catch me off guard. I did not expect that to be what the film ended up being. I just from like the few clips that they show in like the trailer, I just thought it was just gonna be a Power Rangers parody. I didn't expect like gross out Twilight Zone, which I was kind of impressed with. Like I almost kind of wish like like what else? Like I almost kind of wish, like, I feel like this director needs to have his own TV show. We're just trying all these other like crazy ideas here. Because yeah, he's done a few other films that I've kind of dug. You know, stuff like Deerskin. Deerskin I kind of dug. And so like Wrong was okay. It wasn't quite for me. I will say this: I'm glad that the director still has more stuff coming out. He's got 2 other films coming out, it looks like, but I don't think they have like sufficient dates yet. They're the 2 films are called Yannick and Dali, with like 7 A's. And yeah, and he's writing, directing. He's editing them. Give props where they're due, man. I think years from now we're gonna see like a big old box set of like the delirious works of Quentin Dupieux. I said Dupreux because I don't know why I thought Dupree. But yeah, gotta get my French right. Dupieux. I'm pretty sure that's how his name is. Let's see, from Duck Shoes. I saw it without any teasers, and I could only describe it to friends as Stranger Things in the Hood. But I saw lots of the similarities with Sorry and Black Dynamite references. Yeah, and it's like, I'd almost say like, yeah, that you might almost kind of want to pitch it that way, even if it disappoints people that it's not as subversive as Sorry to Bother You. Because there's never a moment where you're like, oh man, I didn't expect this to happen. Like, by the time you get to like the second act, you pretty much can see where this is all going, without a lot of surprise. But it still plays out well. I like the way it proceeds. Yeah. So yeah, here we go. So let's play a little bit of outro music here. All right, so what do we cover on today's show? We covered Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. A fairly... Oh my goodness, I knocked the desk when I did that. Mutant Mayhem, a fairly... a Ninja Turtles film that's animated. It's the second one we've gotten animated, but it has its own unique style, its own voice. It feels like it's playing up to this generation, and it has amazing animation and a kick-ass soundtrack by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. That's the number one thing I would say to go see the film, is just the soundtrack. It kicks ass. And it's also just fun, you know. We also reviewed Venture Brothers, Radiant is the Blood of the Baboon Heart. It's a fitting finale to the Venture Brothers saga, with great animation, great voice acting, and just that wonderful writing that we've come to expect from the best Adult Swim show ever made. We also reviewed They Cloned Tyrone, a sci-fi satire about racial gentrification. It proceeds down pretty much a fairly predictable track when you get to the second act, but it's got some good performances by John Boyega and Jamie Foxx and Paris. They all do great in this. So yeah, it's fairly predictable, but still a pretty fun urban satire. So definitely go check it out. It's not playing on Netflix. And we also reviewed Smoking Causes Coughing, a weird, very weird anthology that starts off as Power Rangers, then goes into bizarre elements of violence and gore, and just goes all over the place in a surreal trip of a dream. And it's not going to be for everyone, and I gotta admit, parts of it really didn't work for me. But it's shooting for the fences, and it's trying something bizarre, and gotta give credit where it's due. That is currently playing on Hulu. Oh, I should have mentioned where they're all playing. Like, Ninja Turtles currently playing in theaters, Venture Brothers currently playing on digital, They Clone Tyrone's currently playing on Netflix, and Smoking Causes Coughing is on Hulu. So there's something on every platform. And yeah, like, I mean, even with my issues with Smoking Causes Coughing, there are technicalities of it I actually kind of like. So yeah, all fairly good films this week. Hannibal Grimm says that soundtrack was the best part. For sure. I think even like the most jaded Ninja Turtle fans will go into that film and say, yeah, that soundtrack kicks ass. Even like, I forgot to mention it in the review, but also the way that the film is edited too. There's a great scene where they're raiding all the various criminal organizations, and it's all edited together to no diggity. And the seamless cuts between them is just, it's so good. That was definitely one of my favorite scenes in the film. All right, let's get some credits up here. If you want to read any of my reviews, you can check them out on movieswithmark.com and filminquiry.com and twincitiesgeek.com. In particular, I do have written reviews up for Venture Brothers and Ninja Turtles over on movieswithmark.com. And hopefully, either by tomorrow or Saturday, I should have the review of Ninja Turtles up on Film Inquiry, which gets picked up by Rotten Tomatoes. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that so I can boost that score up, because it deserves a lot of love. Like, it's not my favorite Ninja Turtles film, but it's definitely a fun one. It's definitely up there. So if you like early reviews like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like. Be sure to check out my Patreon where I'm writing movie books. And be sure to check out this channel more for more movie reviews and essays. I will be back in 2 weeks where we will talk about a lot of new films, including The Last Voyage of the Demeter. And I think possibly we might talk about Strays, the adult dog movie that I'm not really looking forward to. Maybe. We'll see. Well, we'll see if we can either cover that or Gran Turismo, which is kind of... The Gran Turismo movie is kind of like up in the air right now. Like, cause it's coming out on August 25th now. Like, it got pushed back like 2 weeks. So I don't know if we're still going to have the same screeners. We'll see. But we'll definitely have some more reviews coming up in the next 2 weeks. So... until next time, I will see you all later. So, have a good one, everybody.